Alright, I went and found the rarest Dark Souls attacks, and apparently the Bed of Chaos has a hidden meteor shower attack, so here it is. It's actually not that rare, and it's all about positioning, and if you're in this corner, it occurs about once every 12 attacks, but that's just the start, and it gets by far more scarce. With the help of you and online research, I made a list of the rarest Dark Souls attacks and roughly calculated their chances. At the bottom of this graph is the Flexile Sentry's grab attack, Royal Rat Authority's throw-up move, Centipede Demon's fireball, Madeira Nito's grab, and the Rodden's magic attack. Past the Bed of Chaos, and it starts to get more infrequent. The Covetous Demon, about once every 2 minutes, will eat you alive and then spit you out with all of your armor unequipped. It's a really cool attack for a boss no one's gonna get hit by. Another frequently infrequent one is the Iron King's AoE attack. I say that as once you know how to trigger it, it's not that rare. But to cause the attack, you must be within inches of him, which is really difficult to do if you don't have infinite health. As we go up, the Nameless King's bird has a wind attack that really only occurs if you're under his chest, so players who play in front don't see this move as there's no way for it to trigger. Now, having multiple bosses is interesting because it varies the data. With all 4 of the 4 kings, his missile magic move has around a 3% chance per attack, but of course if there's only one of the 4 kings then it's pretty rare at 0.77%, which would be the 3rd rarest. But I want to be as giving with these numbers, so I'll just assume that all 4 kings are around, which puts its dot here. Another one is the Rodden's throw-up attack, and after a while of just hugging him, he'll clutch his body and then proceed to spit oil. If hit by it, then any fire you touch will cause you to explode. Although I don't know why it's so infrequent, as it's pretty cool. Now online, I asked you guys for attacks, and one of the most commented ones was Vendrick's Dark Orb. But if you feel like participating in future videos, subscribe, it helps out a lot. But this is when the attacks start to get rare and weirdly specific. Vendrick's Orb attack is already infrequent enough because it occurs only at range. Then you add this with the actual rarity and I can see why it's one of the more popular rare attacks. But when at distance, he'll either run up to you and do a leaping strike, or very infrequently throw a tiny ball at you. I assume it's for when you're trying to heal. But then why is it so rare? But very similar to Vendrick's attack, and only 0.01% rare, is another oddly specific move, which is from the Pursuer. After successfully dodging his charge attack, there are multiple outcomes, but for some reason every once in a while he'll finish his combo with a twisty slam. I have no reason why it's there, and more so why it's so specific, but it does exist. Now, this move was brought to my attention by a video from Ray Dimitri, which involves shoving your back against an iron-clad soldier. So, of course I went and tried it, and after way too long of just backstepping, I got the attack to trigger. As you can see, it's this tiny little kick, but the issue is I need to be hit by it. But every time I would just muscle memory the move, and I kinda did this 13 times. It took way longer than it should have, but on the 14th move, I finally didn't dodge, and we can see one of the more brutal, I guess, grab attacks. I'm not sure what to call this one. Although this is easily one of my favorite hidden moves. Onto whatever the Falconer is, and this move is already rare enough as it only appears in New Game Plus. But in your second playthrough at the very start, the Falconer will fittingly spawn with a falcon on his arm, although he doesn't actually use it, and the rare move is the falcon doing anything. And after 226 attacks and the Falconer using his normal non-falcon sword, I finally got the bird to swoop, although I don't know why it's so rare as it is in his name. We're at the final 3, and before I get to them, I do want to mention a weird scenario for the kind of rarest attack. It's not on the graph, but it would occur between these 2 points, and just like the 4 kings, the Gargoyles have a rare attack that only triggers at distance, but then it starts to get complicated because it's only at distance while at very low health. So I left only 1 Gargoyle and got the attack to trigger twice out of 371 attacks, but this is when it gets odd, because you can have a total of 5 Gargoyles all at low health, but why would you? And this is why I found such varied results online, because it depends if you play at range and for some reason leave the Gargoyles at low health. But to have something on the board, I'll just assume that players will have 2 Gargoyles at low health, which then would place the dot right here. But we've made it to the final 3, and these were a grind. Not because I had to stand in the fight for way too long, but because the specifics were relatively unknown. But I read that Kalameet has a fairly hidden swoop attack that triggers under him and maybe near a wall? There are videos of it, but honestly they're not that helpful as you can't see anything. But after a while of just running around and trying to get the boss near a wall, he finally did the move. But of course I have no idea what I'm looking at, especially when you're this close. Although with the help of Cheat Engine, we can detach the camera and finally see a good angle, so here's the swoop in all of its glory. Anyways, on to the second rarest, and Quelaag has a move that will only trigger while in the correct position while also repeatedly attacking. Apparently while right behind the boss and consistently hitting the back of her spider abdomen, there's a chance it'll trigger an almost AoE move to have your character get out of the way. And after a long time, the move finally happens. The attack involves her abdomen shooting these weird fireballs that do massive damage. And I can see why it's so infrequent, as the positioning plus the rarity just makes it too hard to encounter normally. Although the king of weirdly specific criteria is the Ceaseless discharge. He isn't on the graph, but is still worth mentioning. And little did I know the challenge wasn't the rarity, but the specifics of it. As said in this comment, the boss only does his rare attack well on the lower part of his map after the stairs, so that's what I tried. And after a while of debating if I'm in the wrong position or if I'm just unlucky, I decided to look into the video displaying it, which does mention them playing in New Game Plus, so I changed my game to it, and it finally worked. Although it still only works on the lower part of the map, which I assume is because in your second playthrough you don't have a run up to the boss. But I didn't even know there were new moves in New Game Plus, which is actually pretty cool. But finally, we've made it to the top of the graph. After all of these bosses, this is the one that took the longest. The Pursuer's back and he takes every aspect of the last couple bosses. To get this attack to trigger, it has to be phase 2 of the fight. Once entered, he'll have a move where his sword lights up and he tries to stab you. If you're caught, then he's able to use some of his magic abilities, where we see new moves. Then if you manage to get some distance, about the entire arena, and he doesn't do a move that closes the gap, then you might get to see a pretty lame version of the Moonlight Greatsword. It's honestly quite underwhelming, but this is the one that took me the longest, and at least seeing it is gratifying enough. But I will say, for what I found, the rarest is technically the Pursuer, but there are many attacks that if you weren't looking for, you would just never find. I mean, the specificity of Quelaag's, or even at the very top, the Royal Rat Authority, which only triggers when he's at very low health, just like Sif, but no one takes a chance to see it because, well, it's the Royal Rat Authority. And I mean, even the Centipede Demon's long-ranged attack feels rare because, well, how do you get that much distance on that boss? But here's the entire list, and feel free to go out and try and find these rare attacks and help solidify the very rough data I have displayed here. But if I missed anything or got anything wrong, I'd love to know. And if you liked the video, subscribe. But as always, I appreciate you watching up until this point. Have a good one.